Donald Trump, a name synonymous with wealth, reality television, and most recently the presidency of the United States. Adolf Hitler, a name forever etched in history as the architect of the Holocaust and the dictator who plunged the world into war. Two men, separated by time and circumstance, yet bound by a disturbingly similar thread, the language of hate. While comparisons between political figures and Hitler are often deemed hyperbolic and insensitive, the echoes of the past resonate deeply in Trump's rhetoric, demanding a closer examination. Both Trump and Hitler ascended to power by tapping into existing societal anxieties and prejudices. Hitler preyed on the economic despair and resentment simmering in post-war World War I Germany, scapegoating Jews and other minorities for the nation's woes. Trump similarly rose to prominence by exploiting fears about immigration, globalization, and the perceived erosion of American dominance. Both men presented themselves as saviors, the only ones capable of restoring their respective nations to a mythical former glory. The language used by both leaders was often shocking in its crudeness and brutality. Hitler infamously dehumanized Jews, referring to them as rats and vermin that needed to be eradicated. Trump, while perhaps less explicitly genocidal, has consistently employed dehumanizing language when speaking about immigrants, calling them animals, criminals, and rapists. This deliberate use of inflammatory language served to demonize entire groups of people, making it easier to justify discrimination and violence against them. At the heart of both Hitler's and Trump's rhetoric lies the insidious tactic of scapegoating. Both men understood the power of identifying an other, a group to blame for society's problems and direct the frustrations of their followers towards. For Hitler, it was the Jews who were responsible for Germany's economic woes and moral decay. Trump similarly pointed the finger at immigrants, particularly those from Latin America and Muslim-majority countries, painting them as threats to national security, jobs, and even the very fabric of American culture. This strategy of scapegoating served several cynical purposes. Firstly, it allowed both leaders to deflect blame from their own failings and present themselves as strong leaders protecting their people from existential threats. Secondly, it created a sense of unity and purpose amongst their followers, who were encouraged to see themselves as engaged in a righteous struggle against a common enemy. This dynamic, unfortunately, often led to increased prejudice, discrimination, and even violence against the targeted groups. However, it is crucial to acknowledge the significant differences between the two men and the contexts in which they operated. Hitler's rise to power occurred in a defeated and economically devastated Germany, still reeling from the humiliation of World War I. The Nazi Party's ideology was built on a foundation of virulent anti-Semitism and a desire for territorial expansion. Trump, on the other hand, rose to prominence in a relatively stable and prosperous America. While his rhetoric was undeniably divisive and harmful, it lacked the same level of ideological coherence and genocidal intent that characterized the Nazi regime. Both Hitler and Trump were masters of propaganda and understood the power of media to shape public opinion. Hitler's propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels famously said, "If you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it." This principle, later dubbed the Big Lie, was central to the Nazis' rise to power, as they relentlessly spread falsehoods about Jews and other enemies of the state. Trump, too, has shown a blatant disregard for the truth, making thousands of false or misleading statements during his time in office. Like Hitler, he understood that repeating a lie often enough, particularly through his preferred medium of Twitter, could create the semblance of truth in the minds of his supporters. Both men also understood the power of rallies to energize their base and create a cult of personality. Hitler's rallies were carefully choreographed spectacles designed to evoke a sense of awe and adulation for the Führer. Trump's rallies, while lacking the overt militarism of Hitler's gatherings, served a similar purpose. They were opportunities for him to rail against his opponents, spread misinformation, and bask in the adulation of his supporters. The rallies created an echo chamber where his most extreme views were cheered and amplified, further normalizing his divisive rhetoric. However, it's important to note that the media landscape in which Trump operated was vastly different from that of Hitler's Germany. The consequences of Hitler's rhetoric are well documented and horrifying. His words, fueled by hatred and prejudice, paved the way for the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews. The world watched in horror as the consequences of unchecked hate speech unfolded, vowing to never forget the lessons of the past. While it is hyperbolic and ahistorical to directly equate Trump's rhetoric with the horrors of the Holocaust, it is equally dangerous to dismiss the very real harm caused by his language. Trump's presidency coincided with, and arguably contributed to, a surge in hate crimes and white supremacist activity in the United States. His dehumanizing language about immigrants, Muslims, and other minority groups emboldened extremists and created a climate of fear and intolerance. His words, while perhaps not intended to incite violence, undoubtedly had that effect in some cases. The scars of division and mistrust he left on American society will likely take years, if not generations, to heal. The comparisons between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler, while uncomfortable and imperfect, serve as a stark reminder of the power of words and the importance of vigilance against the dangers of hate speech. While history may not repeat itself exactly, it often rhymes, and it is our responsibility to learn from the mistakes of the past to prevent the rise of similar demagogues in the future. We must be wary of leaders who seek to divide us based on fear, prejudice, and the scapegoating of the other. The future of our democracies may depend on it.